Super Lucky Disaster Man. Chapter 41, Come Here and Write a Novel. Natsume Soseki waited for a few seconds, and as he predicted, the footsteps outside approached steadily, without any panic. Based on his analysis, Komaeda Nagito's personality tends to be naturally obedient. No matter how strange, shocking, or troubling the situation is, he can remain calm, even joyfully accepting it. A few seconds later, the owner of the room pushed open the slightly closed door. Natsume Soseki casually put down the book in his hand. It was his novel Komaeda Nagito has bought. He was a bit curious about what Komaeda Nagito would write in his own book, so he flipped through it, only to find that surprisingly, nothing was written inside. Was it because the book was meant to be stored, and thus was carefully preserved? Natsume Soseki couldn't quite understand. Actually, it was simply because when reading Natsume Soseki's novel, Komaeda Nagito wouldn't get distracted, and naturally wouldn't scribble random things in the book. In summary, when he was reading his own novel, Komaeda Nagito had returned, considering all aspects of the investigation that could display Komaeda Nagito's admiration towards himself. Natsume Soseki remained quite calm, without immediately turning into a cat and running away. After all, this time he came to find Komaeda Nagito to resolve some of his own doubts, and running away simply wouldn't solve the problem. It's just that this kind of illegal intrusion of his will likely make Komaeda Nagito's favorability towards him drop quite a bit. But since there are still other forces monitoring this house, he have no proper way to visit formally. Komaeda Nagito's gaze swept around the room, seemingly observing if anything had been moved. Although in the eyes of the other party, he was likely already an illegal intruder, Natsume Soseki still tried to justify himself. This old man was only checking to see if there were any eavesdropping devices in your house, and afterward, I only glanced at your books. I see. Komaeda Nagito smiled at Natsume Soseki. Thanks, don't worry, I'm not angry. I guess the reason you didn't use the front door was to avoid those eyes outside, right? Natsume Soseki. This response seems somewhat off. Is this really the reaction someone should have after discovering that their home has been illegally invaded? Yet, they even helped him find a good excuse. What if he turned out to be a bad person? However, this reaction suggests that another of his guesses might be correct. Natsume Soseki, out of courtesy, took off his small round hat and then used his cane to stand up. I thought you might roughly know who I am. Ah. Komaeda Nagito's smile grew broader, and his grayish-blue eyes swirled with a manic joy. His voice lowered slightly, carrying a faint tremor as if holding back excitement. Natsume-sensei. You really do know. Natsume Soseki sighed. Komaeda Nagito seemed under emotional pressure, trying to keep himself from getting too excited, but the flush of blood on his pale cheeks still showed his intense inner state, so the calico cat just now was actually Natsume-sensei. I'm sorry, because calico cats all look quite similar, the worthless me couldn't immediately recognize your wisdom. If there is a next time, I will prepare some nice dried fish. Natsume Soseki, no, there's no need for that. When he was outside in his cat form, seeing that Komaeda Nagito had no reaction upon seeing him, he thought that the other person actually didn't know that deeply, but it turned out it was only because he couldn't distinguish between calico cats. Natsume Soseki vaguely realized that Komaeda Nagito had this mysterious ability to instinctively draw people into his vortex of words, unconsciously leading them off topic, so he decisively chose to get straight to the point. Since you already know my identity, then I'll ask directly, how did you recognize me? Komaeda Nagito tilted his head. A guess? Natsume Soseki said seriously, this old man bears no ill will, I just wants to confirm something. Komaeda Nagito smiled silently and began to ponder how exactly he should answer this question. No way, he just guessed. If Natsume-sensei doesn't believe him, what else can he do? He guessed rather casually, far from being as meticulous as investigating a murder case in another world. First of all, it was when he went out that he saw that calico cats actually have their own territory, and he had never seen a calico cat near his house. But considering it looked rather, well-fed, he could temporarily rule out it being a stray cat. It was possibly a house cat that had run out or a free-roaming pet. Next, his house's anti-theft system. After encountering thieves several times, the Tei Corporation's insurance company specifically hired experts to customize it. Even Dazai-Osamu would probably need quite some time to pick the lock, not to mention that all the entry points were secured, and before leaving the house, he made sure to lock everything up properly. Upon returning, there was no sign of anything wrong with the door. If there was anything unusual, it would only be the half-open bathroom window. After all, a normal person's body definitely wouldn't be able to fit through it, and in a short time, it was also difficult to pry open. Even the last time he was kidnapped, they only managed to get in after searching him for the key. Otherwise, their attempts to force open the security door or window would have caused enough commotion for the neighbors to call the police. When he returned, there was no sign of anything wrong from the outside of the house. In other words, the intruder had entered peacefully, meaning it was most likely an ability user, or else he hadn't found any vulnerability. Originally, he thought it could be anyone, but as soon as he stepped inside and saw the uninvited guest take off his hat, revealing hair of a peculiar color similar to that of a calico cat, holding a Natsume Soseki book in his hands. Considering that Dazai-Osamu had once told him, his ability is called No Longer Human, which shares the same name as the work of another world's Dazai-sensei, Komaeda Nagito almost instantly had a guess in his heart. This person might very well be Natsume Soseki, and his ability is probably called I Am a Cat. The other party also had a, you definitely know who I am, look on their face, so Komaeda Nagito simply stated his guess outright. Seeing the other party's reaction, he knew he had guessed correctly. This is this world's Natsume Soseki. Even though it's a different world, he's still striving to write, using words to guide people's hearts, a great literary figure. What a sparkling hope this is. Calm down, calm down. This is not like those classmates of his. Even if he said something strange that wasn't accepted, everyone's activity range is so coincidentally large that sooner or later, they'd run into each other. This one here is a big name. If he said something wrong that made the other never want to see him again, then meeting again would be a bit troublesome. Komaeda Nagito's head was filled with all thoughts of praises for Natsume Soseki, and for a moment, he couldn't figure out where to start explaining. However, in truth, Natsume Soseki saw Komaeda Nagito's silent demeanor and thought that he didn't want to answer, so he sighed and said, just assume you're guessing. Then, regarding this, do you also want to say that you guessed? Natsume Soseki turned Komaeda Nagito's Japanese language textbook to the page where it was written, I am a cat, Natsume Soseki, and stared at Komaeda Nagito's expression without blinking. Komaeda Nagito blinked. Ah, I see, so that's it. He guessed it correctly again. This world's Natsume Soseki's ability is indeed called I am a cat, otherwise, there wouldn't be such a reaction from the other party. Natsume-sensei, please rest assured, I won't reveal your ability. Komaeda Nagito immediately began to express his loyalty, placing a hand on his chest, as if he wanted to dig out his own heart to show the other person, his eyes burning as he looked towards Natsume Soseki. A small, powerless piece of trash like me should have nothing to do with your world, so when I wrote those words, I never thought I would cause you trouble. I swear, from now on, if I ever got distracted again, I will definitely check once more, and destroy anything I shouldn't have written. If you are not at ease, I am willing to become your stepping stone, whether it means killing me, imprisoning me, or some other method, I can accept it all. Natsume Soseki listened to these words, outwardly still maintaining composure and calmness, but in reality, he was already somewhat astonished inside. Huh? Is this what you all concluded as broad-minded? Is the special division currently just drawing lots for passing candidates? Just how much of a mistake in their work would it take to reach this kind of result? While Natsume Soseki was momentarily speechless due to his shock, unsure of what to say, Komaeda Nagito continued his endless chatter. I initially thought I would be kidnapped again, but to my surprise, it's actually Natsume-sensei. Today, I'm truly too lucky. Even if I immediately become paralyzed, it would make sense. No need to make sense this kind of thing. Before you leave, please sign for me. I've always really admired Natsume-sensei, and I promise I'll keep the autograph safe, although perhaps this house will burn down and conveniently destroy the autograph, but I still want to have a piece of this world sensei's autograph, since I never got one before. Don't use the possibility of the house burning down as a basis for deciding whether you want an autograph or not. Huh. Wait, this world? Natsume Soseki, who had always found himself unable to chime in, and didn't know what to say, suddenly caught onto the key point and finally could open his mouth. This world, what do you mean by that? Komaeda Nagito smoothly broke away from his fluent speech, tilting his head with an innocent expression. Weren't you asking me how I knew the name of your ability? Natsume Soseki stared sharply at Komaeda Nagito for a few seconds. After escaping from the other's mind-boggling words, he regained his ability to think and quickly started going through the information in his head, soon guessing something. You have memories of another world. Komaeda Nagito nodded with a smile. As expected of Natsume-sensei, you caught the key point so quickly. Reaching this conclusion, Natsume Soseki could hardly believe it. Komaeda Nagito's information. Well, not mentioning the personality aspect, at least regarding who he has interacted with since childhood, what he has gone through, all of it has been thoroughly investigated, and there's truly nothing that could give him the chance to know such classified intel. Moreover, after he asked for Komaeda Nagito's information yesterday, people from the special division contacted other departments, conducted another investigation on Komaeda Nagito, and confirmed the authenticity of the information. There was no fabrication, and the personal details matched perfectly. This only made Natsume Soseki even less able to understand how the other party managed to obtain his information. He even knows his real name. What else is there to say? This kid definitely has issues. Unfortunately, even Natsume Soseki can't do anything about Komaeda Nagito's information. No flaws can be found at all, only guessing it was a coincidence, perhaps, during that record-less incident, the other person unintentionally learned something about him. These words, even if spoken by a 3-year-old child, wouldn't necessarily be believed. If not for being certain that Dazai Osamu, the ability nullification person, had interacted with Komaeda Nagito several times without anything unusual, he would even suspect whether someone had used an ability to possess this child. Komaeda Nagito himself currently came up with something entirely new, an idea that he had never considered before. Another world. Special abilities exist, but a parallel world, huh? Natsume Soseki accepted it rather quickly, but although this explanation could clarify all doubts, it couldn't immediately convince him. New evidence was needed. If he were that easily convinced, he wouldn't have survived until now. Komaeda Nagito, seeing Natsume Soseki seemingly deep in thought, stepped lightly over and pulled out his desk chair. Please have a seat. I'm sorry the living room is a bit messy. Would you like me to make some tea for you? Natsume Soseki sat down but gracefully declined the tea. No, you should sit too, we really need to talk for a bit. This room had only one chair, so Komaeda Nagito obediently sat on the bed beside it. Considering Komaeda Nagito's attitude towards him, Natsume Soseki didn't bother with further formalities and spoke directly. I need to confirm a few questions, can you answer me? Of course. When dealing with Natsume Soseki, who undoubtedly shone brightly in the literary world, Komaeda Nagito's attitude was even more enthusiastic compared to dealing with Oda Sakanosuke, Amuro Toru, and Dazai Osamu. His face was filled with willingness to answer any questions asked. Of course, this is also because Komaeda Nagito is well aware that if Natsume Soseki's ability is really "I am a cat," then he necessarily needs to come up with a reasonable explanation for why he knows. Natsume-sensei's gaze is so insightful, filled with the light of wisdom. Being able to know what he wrote in the Japanese language textbook means that the other party's intel network is also very powerful, far from just being a simple novelist. Komaeda Nagito doesn't believe that his insignificant existence could successfully deceive the other party. Natsume Soseki pondered for a few seconds and first chose a less critical question. The excerpts you've written in your notes and books, are any of them from another world of mine? Komaeda Nagito immediately picked up the books, flipping through them, occasionally pausing to show something to the other, and then searched for the next passage. Natsume Soseki nodded while silently making judgments in his mind. It was the same as he had guessed when he read those passages before. Only now he knew, this wasn't someone imitating his writing, but rather, it was genuinely from a different version of himself. Besides, if anyone in this world, even if they were imitating his style, could write with such depth of thought, they would have already become famous. Which one do you like best? Natsume Soseki asked. Komaeda Nagito picked one at random. He had once mentioned this very quote to Dazai Osamu, this one. In the world, even if there's just one thing that's good, it's necessary to find something that can capture your own heart, something grand, beautiful, or kind. Looking at these words, recalling Komaeda Nagito's life of constant gains and losses, never able to hold on to anything, Natsume Soseki instantly shared the same thought as Dazai Osamu. It's a quote you'd like. As long as there is a goal, you can continue to survive. Natsume Soseki closed his book and continued to ask, do you only have memories of a different timeline, or is there another situation? Komaeda Nagito then explained that the moment he opened his eyes, he found himself kidnapped and trapped in a warehouse. Due to various reasons, he did not explain everything clearly, leaving out most of the truth, and roughly mentioned his own situation regarding the staged suicide scene. That's how it is. I originally thought I might die or perhaps be rescued, but unexpectedly, I ended up in another world. He spoke calmly, but Natsume Soseki broke out in a cold sweat after hearing this. Although he spoke in a simplified manner, still. Suicide is even made this complicated, so eagerly looking forward to the next progress, isn't there already a huge problem with yourself? Natsume Soseki made some guesses in his mind about Komaeda Nagito's purpose for suicide, and finally had some understanding of the concept behind this child's madness. So, earlier, this child said he wanted to be a stepping stone. If he wants to keep it confidential, even if it means killing him, it doesn't matter. He is serious. In a way, a mad person is even harder to deal with than someone who stops at nothing. Natsume Soseki became even more cautious in his attitude towards Komaeda Nagito. Come, tell me about that world of yours, Natsume Soseki said, realizing he was being too vague, and then added, for example, are there people like me in that world of yours, and what differences are there compared to your world? Komaeda Nagito sighed, if I had to say, a lot of people have switched professions. Originally, everyone was a literary figure like Natsume-sensei, but up until now, I've only seen you, Natsume-sensei, Conan Doyle. Ah, there's one more person I just recently got to know who's starting to write novels. The others? Natsume Soseki was puzzled, and he asked as an example, your friend, Dazai Osamu, is also a literary figure? He's not my friend, but yes, that's right. Komaeda Nagito said, Dazai-kun is indeed a very famous literary author, though it's a pity he currently has no intention of writing anything. What about Moriogai? Of course, he is too. Then, do you know Amuro Toru? Ah, no, I haven't heard of him or seen him in another world. Natsume Soseki felt he might be grasping a pattern. He glanced at Komaeda Nagito's bookshelf and took out a book. What about this one? Komaeda Nagito glanced at it and realized it was by an author he felt, apart from Kudo Yusaku, was the best writer of detective novels in Japan, Kindaichi. No, the other world doesn't have an author named Kindaichi. Komaeda Nagito hesitated for a moment and said, but if we're only talking about Kindaichi, it makes me think of another author named Yokomizo Seishi. There's no mistake. Natsume Soseki put the book back on the shelf, seeming lost in thought. The person behind the pen name, Kindaichi, he just so happened to know the real name of the person, which was Yokomizo Seishi. If Kindaichi is the pen name of the other world's Yokomizo Seishi, then wouldn't your first reaction be to guess his true identity? Natsume Soseki questioned. If it's not a pen name, then why would you think of Yokomizo Seishi because of Kindaichi? Komaeda Nagito smiled, tilting his head, because the best novel series he had written, the protagonist named was Kandaichi A. Natsume Soseki's expression became even more serious. He asked a few more names, along with their representative works, then slowly nodded, I understand. Even if it's another world, it has a mysterious connection to this one. If he wanted to make use of this connection, Komaeda Nagito's existence would be too important. Natsume Soseki tapped on the table, looked at Komaeda Nagito, assessing him in his mind, and made a decision. Komaeda-kun, I am willing to trust you. I hope you can agree to a request of mine. The intel report has proven that Komaeda Nagito is innocent, so it's possible to trust him more and involve him more deeply. What's the request? Komaeda Nagito happily clasped his hands in front of his chest, his eyes flashing with excitement. As long as I can help Natsume-sensei, no matter what it is, I can do it. Natsume Soseki had a cold sweat drop down the back of his head, feeling that while this child could be trusted, his personality was still a bit of an issue. Everything would have to be taken slowly. You said you can recall a book you read from another world, but it would give you a headache, right? Yeah. Komaeda Nagito seemed to understand something. I can be patient. Someone as useless as me, it's already difficult enough to be able to help Natsume-sensei in a rush, so please don't worry about me. Natsume Soseki looked at Komaeda Nagito with a bit of guilt. Knowing well that this child's life was already in shambles, he not only couldn't find a way to help but was also making the situation even more painful for him. But for Yokohama, for everyone's future, he had no choice but to do this. If Komaeda-kun wanted to resent him in the future, he could come to him. Komaeda-kun, about this person. Natsume Soseki moved the Japanese language textbook, picked up the notebook underneath, flipped to a certain page, and presented it to Komaeda Nagito. Just to ask, do you know his full name? Komaeda Nagito nodded, Fyodor Mikhailovich Dostoevsky. Very good. Natsume Soseki asked, did he write a lot in another world? About 10 or so books. Komaeda Nagito, although he had some guesses about Natsume Soseki's identity, wasn't sure what he was asking for. I've read around 7 or 8 of them. In that case, I'd like to ask a favor of you, Natsume Soseki said seriously. Take the novels you've read that he wrote and rewrite each one. I know there might be a lot of words, but I don't need them completed, just write the beginning of each one, about 60 or 70,000 characters per book, enough for one book to be published. Komaeda Nagito pondered, would that help you? It will. Natsume Soseki said, these books will be published overseas in the future, and maybe even the author themselves will be able to see them. If Komaeda Nagito wrote the book under the same name as the one with that special ability, even signing it with his own name, then Dostoevsky would definitely shift his attention to the person who wrote those books. Komaeda Nagito would absolutely be protected, and no ordinary person would suspect that the true author is just a junior high student. In this way, even if the opponent wanted to investigate, they would only find the decoy they had set up, allowing the target to become even more focused. At that point, if they wanted to track the opponent's movements again, it would definitely be much better than before. Even if it meant relying on luck, what if it worked? I understand. Komaeda Nagito's eyes sparkled, I will write it. Natsume Soseki asked, by the way, what books of his have you read? Komaeda Nagito listed a string of book titles. Natsume Soseki pondered for a moment, considering Komaeda Nagito's luck, and asked, which one do you want to write first? Crime and Punishment? It really sounded like an ability name. Natsume Soseki decisively clapped his hands, then start with that one. Chapter 41 End. Chapter 42, Acknowledging a Mentor and the Difference in Treatment. I didn't think Natsume-sensei would trust me like this, I'm truly honored. I really hope my luck can work this time, that I can pick the one book that will have the desired effect. So, when should I start, today? Natsume Soseki looked at Komaeda Nagito, who seemed even more eager than himself, and couldn't help but fall silent for a moment. Wait a moment. We're starting right away. With only one comment, he easily decided to bait the Russian person who had manipulated things behind the scenes during the Dragon's Head conflict last year. Only now did Natsume Soseki finally realize that something was amiss. "Is there nothing you want to ask?" Natsume Soseki couldn't help but ask. Komaeda Nagito curiously asked back, "Ask about what?" Natsume Soseki was speechless for a few seconds, then reminded him with a bit of preschool teacher patience, "You currently have resources that others do not, so you have the right to make a few requests." From the very beginning, when Natsume Soseki interacted with Komaeda Nagito, he noticed that because of the striking way this child spoke, it was quite easy for him to confuse others and then lead the pace astray. After realizing this point in time, Natsume Soseki had been paying particular attention to it, but it was clear that he needed something from someone, and the person he sought, Komaeda Nagito, seemed to be in a posture of, "Nothing to hide, any request will be granted." This kind of attitude was really too easy to mislead others. Even Natsume Soseki unknowingly discarded his earlier, "take it slow," idea, and by the time he regained his senses, they had already skipped a few steps, jumping to the current situation. Natsume Soseki regained his composure somewhat. He was certainly at fault, but Komaeda Nagito had an even bigger problem. He always gave off a vibe of, "Come take advantage of me, use me as you like, I won't resist." This was too dangerous. This time, it was him. Who knows who it would be next time? How could he, even if he represented the government's stance, actually bring danger to Komaeda Nagito? This kid looks very smart, so why didn't he ask a few more questions? It can't be that he didn't consider this, right? "I don't have any demands." Faced with Natsume Soseki's reminder, Komaeda Nagito smiled unchanged. "Even someone as useless as me can help Natsume-sensei. It's really like a dream come true to have such a good opportunity. How could I still be so shameless as to make demands?" Natsume Soseki. He couldn't help but look again at Komaeda Nagito's information. Clearly, aside from his incredible luck, Komaeda Nagito was excellent in every aspect, so why would he end up with such a self-deprecating personality? As expected, the problems in another world are too overwhelming. But his hands couldn't reach that far, so he could only focus on what was right in front of him, preventing things from getting worse and worse. Thus, Natsume Soseki took a deep breath, ignored the parts where Komaeda Nagito's attitude had skipped over steps, and continued patiently guiding him. "Even though I will definitely protect you well, your previous writing style and personal thoughts are absolutely different from that of the Dostoevsky in another world, and your age is exactly your best cover, so it's unlikely that the investigation will lead to you. But there's always that 1 in a million chance, and if that chance turns real, the danger on you will be 100%. Are you sure you've thought it through? It's still not too late to regret now." What he wants Komaeda Nagito to do wasn't the kind of easy copying a book and achieve glory. It was an open conspiracy. An open conspiracy is when the other party knows there's a trap but still jumps into it. By then, it's a competition of both sides' calculations and depth. The key point is to make the other party interested. As long as this succeeds, the details don't matter. Once the other party starts investigating, it's equivalent to falling into a trap. In this plan, Komaeda Nagito not only doesn't gain any honor but also might end up in danger. Agreeing so easily basically means he's not being responsible for himself. But this child not caring about his own life is also very obvious. Natsume Soseki was quite worried. He kept feeling that maybe even without the Russian investigating Komaeda Nagito, he would already be courting death himself. "I understand Natsume-sensei's concerns," Komaeda Nagito said. "Perhaps you cannot comprehend it, but I am also not worried about danger." Natsume Soseki continued, "Because for you, misfortune later turns into good fortune, so you're waiting for misfortune as if it were good fortune, aren't you?" Komaeda Nagito stared intently at Natsume Soseki, the intensity of his gaze almost making the person being looked at feel like they were being ignited. "You can actually understand?" As expected of Natsume-sensei. "Don't think about it," Natsume Soseki said weakly. "From my point of view, there's no way we'll let you meet Dostoevsky." You need to value yourself more. I will make sure to protect you. The intel in Komaeda Nagito's mind, if he could use it, naturally it could also be used by the enemy. He didn't even plan to tell the government, and the only person to know is himself, Komaeda Nagito, along with possibly someone like Dazai Osamu who might guess something. Don't talk about the government sending people to protect. How could he not understand their intentions? As long as this is known to the government, their first reaction would definitely be to protect Komaeda Nagito. First of all, to protect someone who on the surface appears to have no connection to the government is pointless. Even secretly protecting is not really protection. If someone with ill intentions wants to investigate, the slightest hint from within could lead to exposure. This essentially makes it clear that this child has problems. Next, the government will absolutely find a way to completely extract Komaeda Nagito's memories, whether through hypnosis or abilities, whatever is possible. Once Komaeda Nagito loses his value, they will probably even feel that the person's existence isn't safe enough and so on. Although it might not go as far as directly killing him, living a whole life under surveillance is a real possibility. Natsume Soseki would never let the child who helps him fall into such a situation. He couldn't write the novel himself. In this world, the only one who had read Dostoevsky's novels from another world was probably Komaeda Nagito. Otherwise, he would have definitely done it himself if he could. But it wasn't as if he could do nothing. With him standing in front, those who wanted to investigate the authors behind these books would restrain themselves a bit. The greater good is more important than individual benefits, but it hasn't come to the point where anyone needs to be sacrificed yet. If both sides can be preserved, of course, everyone would want that. Komaeda Nagito heard that he might not be able to meet Dostoevsky, and couldn't help but reveal a look of regret. Actually, it really doesn't matter to me. Just look at the fate of the people who have kidnapped me. Although the process may not necessarily be the same, I feel that I won't die because of something like this. No, this is my responsibility. Natsume Soseki looked at Komaeda Nagito, who had such a unique personality and was difficult to predict. He moved his fingers around his cane a little, and said thoughtfully. I have a suggestion. Komaeda-kun, are you willing to become my student? This child, although seemingly quite ordinary at first glance, he could see through it. Even if he gave Komaeda Nagito his contact information, due to his involvement leading to Komaeda Nagito being in danger, Komaeda Nagito would surely not contact him. If there could be a deeper, more intimate relationship beyond the one of using and being used, perhaps it could improve this lone wolf's way of doing things a little. Who? Komaeda Nagito blinked in surprise. Natsume-sensei wants to take me as a student. That's right, what do you think? It really sounds like a joke. Komaeda Nagito frowned in distress. Someone like me. This old man did not intend to take you as a disciple just to make you cooperate more with the plan. It's unnecessary. Even if it weren't for that, you would still help. This old man can see that. That being said, this old man has lived for more than half a lifetime, and has only accepted 2 disciples, so you should understand that this old man does not easily say such things. Natsume Soseki interrupted Komaeda Nagito's usual self-deprecating behavior. Komaeda-kun, there's no need to belittle yourself. This old man sees your potential. You are not someone unimportant. If you don't believe this old man will gradually make you believe it in the future. Komaeda Nagito, even if he possesses the same super memory abilities, it is likely because of the conflicting memories between 2 worlds, causing after effects. Despite having read so many books, he remains the same. There was also the incident where he disguised his own suicide as someone else torturing him to death. Komaeda Nagito's intelligence, drive, and endurance are undoubtedly far above the average person, so calling him useless is simply impossible. His analysis made him feel that Komaeda Nagito was already meeting the standard quite well as a student. It's just that his psychological and mental aspects seem to have major issues. Perhaps that's the very reason he was concerned and had the idea of taking him as a student. Natsume Soseki had previously taken on 2 students, one was Fukuzawa Yukichi, and the other was Mori Ogai. He didn't intentionally attempt to change their personalities, rather, he found that keeping their original state suited his plans better. The primary teaching content also revolved around how to protect Yokohama. As for Komaeda Nagito, although his qualities were adequate, they were not yet remarkable enough for Natsume Soseki to have the intention of taking him as a student. Simply ensuring his personal safety did not seem necessary. Upon careful thought, however, Komaeda Nagito's mental condition was concerning. Natsume Soseki found himself unable to ignore it entirely. He had a lingering feeling that one day this child might be exploited by someone problematic. Komaeda Nagito retracted his smile, gazing at Natsume Soseki with a serious expression. What the other said was genuine, not meant to manipulate for his own gain, but rather genuinely believing that he was worth nurturing. In this world, although there isn't Hope's Peak Academy, receiving Natsume Soseki's approval should be considered a success akin to receiving an acceptance letter from Hope's Peak Academy. No good, no good, no good, no good, he's far too lucky today. What kind of misfortune will he face afterward? Ah. Though his heart was filled with negative words, Komaeda Nagito still fell into a state of elation. I am willing, Natsume-sensei. Natsume Soseki was satisfied with the outcome and sighed in relief. After all, this child always acted in an unconventional way. He revealed a relaxed smile and even had the mood to joke. Now, you truly are my student. Previously, when Komaeda Nagito called him Natsume-sensei, it was merely a respectful title used for intellectuals with social standing. But now, calling him sensei represents a teacher-student relationship. Even Natsume Soseki himself hadn't expected this. Not only had he gained great insight from this trip, but he had also gained a new disciple. Komaeda Nagito, this child. Though not a diamond, he could still be considered a bright pearl covered in dust. If it were a pearl, then his understanding of diamond polishing diamond doesn't quite apply. Too rough and reckless, things could easily go wrong. A pearl ought to be carefully protected, wiping away just a little dust, allowing him to have a correct understanding of himself, thereby letting his own light shine. Though, this pearl, when compared to the diamond and how they clash, it remains uncertain who will end up unlucky. Speaking of this, Natsume Soseki suddenly remembered that one of his disciples, Mori Ogai, seemed quite interested in Komaeda Nagito recently. Thinking it over, he decided to pay attention for now, and if the situation turns unfavorable, then intervene. He may be Mori Ogai's teacher, and Mori Ogai respects him greatly, but mature relationships among adults require maintaining appropriate distance. Since he chose to have Mori Ogai be in charge of the port mafia, he shouldn't interfere too much in Mori Ogai's actions. Considering all aspects, Natsume Soseki gave Komaeda Nagito his contact information that even his other two disciples didn't have. There was no helping it, those two disciples didn't need him to worry about them at all. Komaeda Nagito memorized the new teacher's phone number and email address, then immediately asked a sharp question. Sensei, can you still answer calls when you turn into a cat? Natsume Soseki hadn't spent time with children this age for a long time, and his other disciples were all focused on serious matters. Seeing this kind of lively thinking, he couldn't help but pause. You don't need to worry about it. Oh, okay. Komaeda Nagito nodded in understanding. By the way, take fewer of those medicines. Natsume Soseki glanced at the scattered items on the table, the painkillers Komaeda had bought earlier to endure the headache caused by recalling Dandanbashi, Ojita, and frowned. I'll prepare some with no side effects for you later. Natsume Soseki mocked himself in his heart. Making the other person not only have to endure a headache but also recall novels was entirely his own doing. Now he's playing the good guy by bringing medicine, truly hypocritical. Just from the perspective of protecting students, he wasn't a qualified teacher at all, and could only make up for it in other ways. In any case, if you encounter something you can't handle or don't know what to do, just contact this old man. Natsume Soseki said, this old man is now your teacher, and like the saying goes, a teacher for a day, a father for life. Don't confuse me with your school teachers. Before you graduate, it's my responsibility to help you solve your problems, so don't be polite with this old man, do you understand? Hearing this will make Mori Ogai feel incredibly envious. Don't even talk about seeking help from sensei whenever there's an issue. He and Fukuzawa Yukichi don't even have their teacher's contact information. At least Fukuzawa Yukichi managed to obtain the skilled business permit through Natsume Soseki, whereas he himself had struggled his way from being a regular doctor in the port mafia to where he is now. He had never enjoyed such treatment. It truly felt like the difference between an experimental group and a control group. Komaeda Nagito also didn't know what kind of treatment his senior brothers were getting, and thought that Natsume Soseki was just that good of a teacher, so he obediently replied, "Understood." Natsume Soseki let out a deep sigh. Hopefully, he really understands. He's already at this age, yet still has to take care of a child. Moreover, this child is clearly quite troublesome. Who knows if he can properly find his own way back. Enjoying a peaceful old age seems to be far out of reach. Oh right, becoming this child's teacher, if he's not careful, one day he might also end up paying the price for Komaeda Nagito's luck. How dangerous. But what could he do about it? He couldn't just let it go, and without saying a word, he had already started worrying about what might happen to this child later. Even if it was just taking advantage of this child's situation. After explaining everything clearly, Natsume Soseki transformed into a cat and left through the window. A secret meeting that only heaven, earth, you, and I knew about had come to an end just like that. Since Natsume Soseki didn't allow Komaeda Nagito to take any more painkillers, Komaeda Nagito could only, which avoiding triggering the headache, gradually recalling the parts he truly remembered, which in reality were just the main outline of the story, perhaps with a few character introductions added. Normal people can't possibly remember everything word for word. Komaeda Nagito planned to wait until the painkillers arrived, then trigger his hyperthymesia mode and copy down crime and punishment word by word. Komaeda Nagito actually felt the time pressure because this super memory syndrome form of himself was merely a side effect of the fusion of two world memories, and he didn't know when it would disappear. He was really worried that before he could complete the task assigned by Natsume-sensei, his memory would return to a normal state, and then he really wouldn't be able to help Natsume-sensei anymore. But being able to be taken in as a disciple by Natsume-sensei. Even now, Komaeda Nagito found it a bit unbelievable as he recalled it. His luck often surpassed even his own expectations, and today was truly the luckiest day since he came into this world. Komaeda Nagito, unlike Dazao Samu at the time, did not ask Natsume Soseki to confirm something like, "Do you know how dangerous it is to have me as your student?" because, in his view, if Natsume Soseki couldn't avoid the danger he brought, it would simply mean that Natsume-sensei was not a worthy hope. He had full faith and expectation in Natsume Soseki. "I will do my best," Komaeda Nagito murmured. "Let me see more hope, give me even more hope, that way I can also become hope." On weekend nights, Komaeda Nagito always returned to Tokyo because it made it more convenient for him to attend school the next day. He checked the rental contract seriously. After school on Monday, he would go see the landlord again to get the contract signed, so he wouldn't have to keep secretly staying in a hotel. Thinking of that hesitant expression of the front desk, wanting to say something but stopping short, wanting to confirm something but hesitating, Komaeda Nagito couldn't help but curse inwardly. Being underage is really inconvenient. When will I finally be an adult? The elevator doors opened, and Komaeda Nagito headed to his room. Just as he was about to swipe his card at the door next to him suddenly opened, but instead of Amuro Toru, two unfamiliar tall men emerged. The one with long silver hair, dressed entirely in black, wearing a wide-brimmed hat, had eyes both dark and sharp. He gave Komaeda Nagito a cold glance, furrowing his brows fiercely. "Ah, Jinaniki." Behind him was a more robust-looking man, also dressed in black, wearing sunglasses. He looked like a bodyguard, but his demeanor was unmistakably that of a yakuza. "This kid." "Alright, let's go." The silver-haired man impatiently interrupted, then turned decisively towards the elevator without hesitation. Komaeda Nagito realized that those two were probably from the same organization where Morofushi Hiromitsu had been undercover. Jin, huh? So, at that time, that guy who claimed to be FBI, called Morofushi Hiromitsu Scotch, meaning Scotch whiskey, right? This organization uses alcohol names for all their titles. So wouldn't that make this organization called the Liquor Factory? Komaeda Nagito, with his mind in a complete mess, speculated while his hands didn't stop moving, swiftly opening the door and stepping inside. Standing inside the elevator, this scene could be seen clearly. After the elevator doors closed, one of the men in black spoke softly. "Aniki, that kid is the one Bourbon provided information on." Jin replied indifferently, "No need to interfere, he's with the Port Mafia." Port Mafia? The man in black with the codename Vodka was immediately astonished. "Yokohama over there? I don't think he looks like he's from the Port Mafia. But he just happened to be living next to Scotch and Bourbon, is it really not an issue?" Nowadays, the age of geniuses is getting lower and lower. Major organizations are all recommending special talents. Age doesn't matter at all. Mainly, his demeanor seems very clean. If you said he was with the police, that would still make sense, but mixed with the underworld, it really doesn't seem right. Could it be good acting skills? That's not impossible either. Humph. Jin let out a cold snort. Bourbon did it on purpose. He added that brat to the list to imply, "I've already brought all suspicious individuals to light. If you have doubts, go investigate yourself." As a result, after investigating, they found out that this brat has a really good relationship with the Port Mafia, went on a cruise with the boss of the Port Mafia and Tei Corporation, and even the Port Mafia executives often visit him. Though he probably isn't considered a member of the Port Mafia yet, this process is essentially the recruitment process, so it's likely not much different. Scotch is a member of the Japanese Metropolitan Police Department, and has no relation with the Port Mafia. Although it may be a coincidence, this brat was indeed the first to settle into this room. Besides, the reason for moving that pile of stuff is also quite easy to investigate. There's no way the Japanese police, before anything else, would have already known that Scotch would be exposed, and then start planning together with the Port Mafia, right? If the police were that capable, how could their organization develop to this level in Japan? But Vodka was still troubled. Jin lit a cigarette. "Moreover, it's too obvious." Vodka was stunned and suddenly understood. "Right, it's too much of a coincidence, making people suspicious at first glance, but then reducing suspicion afterwards." Although thinking in the opposite direction is really effective, so many coincidences aren't just due to mere human intervention, it's clearly also a coincidence. From the intel they gathered, that little brat went up to the rooftop once and then quickly went downstairs to leave. This action might seem overly suspicious, but instead makes people feel indifferent. If you were actually involved in something, wouldn't it be better to act normal, slowly sign the rental contract, and then leave? It was probably because he witnessed the execution of that traitor. Anyway, it's just the execution of a traitor, not some highly confidential secret. If that little brat is a member of the Port Mafia, there's no need to silence him, needlessly provoking an enemy. "I understand," as expected of Aniki. Vodka said, "So, is Scotch really dead?" "No suspicious points found, for now, let's consider him dead," Jin said with a cold smile. "But I feel like there's still something off here." "Right, investigate him again later." "Yes, Aniki." Komaeda Nagito, as usual, entered the room, not even knowing exactly what kinds of covert investigations those around him had undergone, or what exchanges Amuro Toru and Dazai Osamu had about him, before putting down his luggage. Just as he was about to tidy up a bit, a phone call suddenly came in. "Komaeda-senpai." Kudo Shinichi said over the phone, "There's something I have to tell you. That landlord's grandpa is in a coma and hospitalized." Komaeda Nagito. Chapter 42 End. Chapter 43, You need to protect your things properly. To make long story short, Dr. Agasa said that this morning, the landlord grandpa was fishing with him when he received a phone call. It seemed to be from his youngest son. Anyway, after the call, he got agitated and then passed out. The hospital said it was a stroke, and they're currently contacting his family. Kudo Shinichi sighed and said, anyway, he probably doesn't have the energy to handle the rental matter. Sorry, senpai, I didn't expect it to turn out like this. Komaeda Nagito listened to Kudo Shinichi's words. Although he was a bit surprised at first, he calmly said, it's alright. Sometimes, things like this do happen. There was some unexpected situation that temporarily appeared, but for Komaeda Nagito, it was just an everyday occurrence. However, it was still unfortunate. If he had signed the contract directly last time, he might have moved in by now, but as a result, everything has returned to the starting point. I'll go accompany Dr. Agasa at the hospital in a bit. Would you like to come along, senpai? Kudo Shinichi said. After all, Dr. Agasa was with him when the incident happened, so I suppose they might have questions for him. If Dr. Agasa can't clearly explain things, it could be troublesome. Family members can sometimes be unreasonable, so it's better if he goes along. Komaeda Nagito refused. I'm not going, I'm just a person looking to rent a place, and I'm not even familiar with the landlord, so going might lead to misunderstandings about my intentions, plus it might cause more trouble. You ask on my behalf, let him rest well. Kudo Shinichi thought about Komaeda Nagito's constitution, then considered that the destination was a hospital, a place where nothing should go wrong, so he wholeheartedly agreed, true. Then, senpai, stay at the hotel a bit longer, I'll help you look again later. Thank you, Kudo-kun, but it's no trouble. Komaeda Nagito said with a wry smile, I guess I probably won't be able to rent a place anytime soon. Kudo Shinichi was puzzled, why do you say that? Komaeda Nagito pondered, because today has been particularly lucky. Kudo Shinichi. Senpai has started again. Kudo Shinichi, already used to this, didn't say anything, simply chatted for a bit, then hung up the phone, planning to visit Dr. Agasa at the hospital. After Komaeda Nagito hung up the phone, he also started sighing. What to do now? Why is renting a place so difficult? Should he really think of a way to buy a house? So the next goal is to change from renting to buying a house, huh? Misfortunes truly never come alone. Just as Komaeda Nagito had finished packing his luggage, the door to his room was knocked upon. When Komaeda Nagito opened the door, he found that the person standing there had a badge on their chest that read, Hotel Manager. The manager's purpose was quite clear, but they spoke in a very tactful manner. Basically, it was something like, we haven't seen your uncle for a long time now. As a minor who has been staying alone at the hotel for an extended period, if this were to be investigated, it would put us in a difficult position, so we hope you can understand, blah blah. In fact, the hotel must have long known that Komaeda Nagito was staying alone. It was just because, temporarily, there was no necessity to do anything, so they let it slide for a while. After all, who wouldn't want to make money? However, today there are two truly intimidating black-clad men arriving. Not only did they specifically target a particular room, but they also inquired about the adjacent room related to Komaeda Nagito. There were even police officers investigating earlier, making the hotel staff start feeling uneasy. The Japanese follow regulations not because they actually like obeying rules, but because it makes it easier for them to evade responsibility. Even if they make exceptions for a while, as soon as something goes wrong, they will immediately revert to, we are simply acting according to the regulations. Komaeda Nagito found himself in precisely this kind of situation. Of course, the hotel couldn't directly chase away guests in the middle of the night. The manager spoke particularly politely, especially tactfully, even offering small gifts and bowing at a 90-degree angle frequently. The etiquette was all in place, showing that they considered the possibility of inconvenience for the guests. Therefore, they allowed a grace period, hoping that by next week the guests could find a place to settle. Seeing off the polite hotel manager, Komaeda Nagito let out a deep sigh. How unfortunate. It came even faster and more overwhelming than I imagined. Komaeda Nagito didn't expect the original landlord to help him find another hotel. After all, they'd already received the payment, there was no need to care for him any further. This one is really a headache, what should he do in a week? The next day, Monday, During lunchtime, Kudo Shinichi went to find Komaeda Nagito, and the two of them found a stone bench to sit down and eat sandwiches. Komaeda-senpai. Kudo Shinichi looked at Komaeda Nagito, whose face still had some cat scratch marks and whose hand was wrapped in a bandage, guessing, "Did you get attacked by a stray cat?" "The scratches on my face are from the landlord grandpa's cat." Komaeda Nagito smiled nonchalantly, raising his bandaged hand. "As for my hand, it was scalded by boiling water." "Ha ha ha, it feels like I've been unlucky ever since last night." Kudo Shinichi. "Is this something you can laugh about?" The future detective sighed, not wanting to ask again if it was water spilling or accidentally being splashed by someone, or was it Komaeda-senpai himself who knocked over a cup. He quickly jumped to another topic. "Is it still possible to stay at the hotel, senpai?" This situation unexpectedly happened, and if senpai had already checked out, it would be somewhat troublesome. "As a matter of fact, I haven't checked out yet," Komaeda Nagito said. "But because some people who looked like members of the mafia showed up, the hotel got a bit nervous and wanted me to check out in a week." Kudo Shinichi's attention was immediately caught by the mention of the mafia. "Mafia? Did you see them?" Komaeda Nagito recalled some of Morofushi Hiromitsu's instructions, and after confirming that there were no related issues, he immediately revealed, "I met two men dressed entirely in black, one of whom was called Jin." Jin. Kudo Shinichi seemed to be pondering. This doesn't sound like a real name, more like a code name. "Senpai, do you know anything else?" The Yakuza in Japan are legal, but having such a mysterious code name likely means what they're doing isn't exactly lawful. Kudo Shinichi, 14 years old this year, was overly confident in his own abilities. When he heard there might be a situation, he got excited and urged Komaeda Nagito to reveal a bit more. He fancied himself as the protagonist of a detective story, capable of discovering major cases from the traces left behind, even solving them before the police could. The scariest part was, Komaeda Nagito didn't mind at all. He believed that if Kudo Shinichi truly had the potential to be a great detective, then giving Kudo-kun some hints would be helping him find the stage to showcase his talents, letting the light of hope shine brightly. As for whether Kudo Shinichi might end up in danger because of it, Komaeda Nagito doesn't mind this at all. To him, dying because of becoming his friends is one thing, but sacrificing oneself for a greater cause is another. He uses his own mindset to interpret others, naturally concluding that Kudo-kun must also be willing to sacrifice for the sake of detective work. These two reckless people come together. As long as the intel is accurate, something is bound to happen. Fortunately, Komaeda Nagito, limited by confidentiality regulations, could only say with regret, "I don't know much beyond this." However, if Kudo-kun continues being a detective, who knows, you might have a chance to encounter it. After all, solving mysteries is a detective's destiny, right? These words, even for someone as blindly passionate about the detective profession as Kudo Shinichi, couldn't help but resonate with his conscience. What a coincidence that would be. Ah! There are so many strange and peculiar organizations in this world. How could he possibly, later on, just happen to coincidentally run into the organization that Komaeda-senpai talked about today? To have this kind of thought, indeed, because for Komaeda-senpai, the probability of coincidences happening is just too high, it can't even be considered coincidence, it can only be considered a normal progression. But he's still just an ordinary person. Things like this wouldn't happen to him. Moreover, does senpai perhaps have some misunderstanding about the detective profession? Kudo Shinichi said tactfully, "Although solving mysteries is my passion, investigating and taking down illegal organizations are not exactly things detectives do." Komaeda Nagito blinked. "Is that so?" Kudo Shinichi said firmly, "Yes." "Alright then." Komaeda Nagito said regretfully, "I thought I could see Kudo-kun brimming with hope while solving the case." Kudo Shinichi secretly wiped his sweat, deciding to change the topic a bit, feeling that if he continued down this path, Komaeda-senpai might want to see him have a one-on-one duel with the criminal mastermind. "By the way, I lent the book, Dandanbashi, Ojita, to my dad." Komaeda Nagito made an "oh" sound. "Did Yusaku-san say anything?" Kudo Shinichi recalled, according to my mom, he was so angry he couldn't sleep all night. Komaeda Nagito couldn't help but laugh. Sorry. There's nothing, I understand. Kudo Shinichi also smiled. The essence is in playing with the readers. I once thought about excluding it from detective novels. Ahem, what I meant was, I wanted to ask, does Little Raccoon-san have any new works? Ah, this, Komaeda Nagito blinked. It's only been a few days since the last one. He hadn't had time to gather Edogawa Ranpoa's materials, nor had he been free to recall new novel to exchange, so there were certainly no new works to see. Ah, but since Kudo Shinichi asked. Actually, if you want to see Little Raccoon-san new work, there are two ways. Komaeda Nagito raised his right index finger. The first way is to exchange a detective novel that he finds challenging with him. The second, Komaeda Nagito raised another finger, is to gather information on Edogawa Ranpo. Kudo Shinichi was instantly stunned. Wait, Edogawa Ranpo? Yes, it seems that he regards Edogawa Ranpo-san as a worthy rival and pays a lot of attention to him, but it's inconvenient overseas. Komaeda Nagito explained, so I plan to start collecting information on Edogawa Ranpo-san's detective cases. No other choice. Even though he had heard of Edogawa Ranpoa's famous name, he had never thought of collecting information about these people in this world. He only wanted to enjoy his own peaceful days. As a result, now he had to start everything from scratch. Immediately, Kudo Shinichi exclaimed, I have it. I have Ranpo-san's information. Komaeda Nagito wasn't surprised. Kudo-kun likes Ranpo-san too. Exactly. Kudo Shinichi said excitedly, because Ranpo-san is so amazing. I've heard that as soon as he arrives at a crime scene, he can immediately determine who the culprit is. No matter what the case is, he can solve it very quickly, like the savior of the Yokohama Police Department, practically a real-life Holmes. It's a pity that when he occasionally goes somewhere else to solve cases, I couldn't catch up to him. It's really regrettable. It doesn't matter. Komaeda Nagito comforted him. I'm also in Yokohama, and I haven't seen him at a crime scene. Kudo Shinichi sighed. So Little Raccoon-san also knows Ranpo-san. Has Ranpo-san's fame spread abroad? Or perhaps, has Little Raccoon-san been to Japan before? That's not very clear, but it's not bad if it happens some days. Komaeda Nagito said, Kudo-kun, I'm shamelessly requesting you. I know. It's about Ranpo-san's information, right? No problem. Kudo Shinichi said, I've cut out every article about him to make a scrapbook. Senpai, do you have a USB? If you bring it, I can get you an electronic version by tomorrow. Komaeda Nagito expressed his gratitude over and over. Thank you so much, Kudo-kun. It's truly my luck to know you. No need to thank me. Kudo Shinichi didn't say anything further, since it was all about friendship nonsense anyway. Whether someone is a friend or not isn't determined by what they say. I was simply personally interested. It was no big deal and took no effort. But if it could be exchanged for Little Raccoon-san's novel, remember to let me read it too. No problem, Little Raccoon-san already knew I'd have to take it to you. Komaeda Nagito said. But many of Ranpo-san's cases actually aren't in the news at all. Besides, most of what I have is old information. New ones are relatively scarce. Kudo Shinichi pondered. Might it not be enough? Komaeda Nagito started provoking him again. Hey, Kudo-kun, want to try writing a detective novel? This time, Kudo Shinichi didn't reject it so quickly but actually started seriously considering it. I'll give it a try, though having too many ideas is a problem. This idea is already great. Komaeda Nagito said, but if you're really planning to write it, you can't just keep thinking about it in your head. It's best to write it down and see. I know an author who wanted to continue writing the ending of a certain novel, but after many years, not a single word has moved. Kudo Shinichi, it might not take many years, but maybe after a break tonight, I'll start trying to write. Teenagers, always eager to explore new things, especially someone like Kudo Shinichi who is so confident, and with a father who is quite famous in the detective novel world, he can't possibly think that he lacks talent in that field. Now he's been given new motivation, and from the looks of it, he might be able to write a book by the end of the year. Komaeda Nagito naturally encouraged him. Well then, I'll look forward to your great work, Kudo-kun. It's not some great work, stop saying that, it's really embarrassing. Overconfident to the point of arrogance, Kudo Shinichi meets his natural nemesis. Continuing to live together with Komaeda Nagito, it wouldn't be long before Kudo Shinichi might have an allergy to praise, instead becoming a humble low-profile boy. Feeling embarrassed, Kudo Shinichi had no choice but to change the topic again. Why is it that chatting with Komaeda-senpai always ends up killing the mood? Komaeda-senpai, the hotel over there can only stay for another week, what do you plan to do after that? I give up, I plan to see if I can buy a place. Komaeda Nagito sighed, that way the options can be broader, though 1 week's time might not be enough. I thought so too. Kudo Shinichi agreed, saying, I also feel responsible. If there's still no news after another week, why don't you stay at my place? As I mentioned before, my parents are traveling around the world, so there's no one at home. This time, Komaeda Nagito didn't directly refuse. He sighed and said, let's see how things go. It wouldn't come to the point of having nowhere to stay. On Tuesday, Kudo Shinichi scanned a newspaper clipping about Edogawa Ranpo that he had made and put the electronic version on a USB for Komaeda Nagito. Komaeda Nagito, naturally, thanked him while accepting it, and handed over a box of desserts given by the hotel manager to Kudo Shinichi as a token of gratitude. Kudo Shinichi knew that if he didn't accept, he would be subjected to an endless barrage from Komaeda Nagito, so he took it and showed some concern. How is it, senpai, have you found a place you like? I found one, I'll go check it out after school today. Komaeda Nagito smiled, now that I think about it, I really should have bought a house when I got blacklisted from renting. Kudo Shinichi, it's not that bad. It's true that middle school students wouldn't usually consider buying a place just because of an issue, and it was normal not to think of it back then, but to gain such a bad reputation in the rental market is rare indeed. Kudo-kun, any progress on the novel? Komaeda Nagito, much like an editor, eagerly asked the author he admired. Kudo Shinichi couldn't help but break into a cold sweat. Currently I'm tangled up with a Snow Lodge case and a locked room murder, still need to think it through a bit. Ah, right, I also have plans with a classmate to eat bento. Here is the USB. I'll leave first, see you, senpai. Watching Kudo Shinichi flee hurriedly, Komaeda Nagito regretfully withdrew his gaze. Hopefully, before the end of the year, Kudo-kun can start writing. Considering that he was always losing things, Komaeda Nagito did not wait until after school to return to the hotel, nor did he use the hotel's computer to send Edogawa Ranpo's information to Little Raccoon-san. Instead, he waited until during computer class in the afternoon, to divide some parts of the files and send them to Little Raccoon-san via personal email. The size was too large, so he split it up for transmission, hoping he might get some novel points out of it. After confirming that the email had been sent, Komaeda Nagito let out a sigh of relief. For the past 2 days, he had been unlucky and nothing had gone smoothly. To have successfully sent it out was truly great. After computer class, some people went to participate in club activities right after, while those heading home left school. Komaeda Nagito casually slipped the USB into his uniform pocket, returned to the classroom to grab his already packed school bag, and headed out the school gate. He planned to go look at apartments. It was better to settle these kinds of things as soon as possible, to end it sooner. He couldn't give up just because things weren't going smoothly lately. What if, while looking at apartments, luck suddenly smiled upon him? Komaeda Nagito first noted down the route to the apartments on his phone. The house isn't very close to the school, commuting requires taking the bus for 2 stops. Aside from that, everything else meets Komaeda Nagito's requirements well. Moreover, 2 stops aren't too far, so Komaeda Nagito is still quite satisfied and plans to conduct an on-site inspection. After school, the queue at the bus stop was longer compared to other times, and there were also more people on the bus. By the time it was Komaeda Nagito's turn, he just happened to not be able to get on, so he had to wait for the next one. Unfortunately, The timing was not very good, and more people started to crowd in, but fortunately, Komaeda Nagito was finally able to squeeze onto the bus. Almost with his feet dangling, after hanging on for 2 more stops, Komaeda Nagito finally managed to get off the bus, thoroughly worn out. As he got off the bus, someone even stepped on Komaeda Nagito's foot, and something under his foot got in the way, causing him to lose his balance. The USB, which wasn't placed very securely in his pocket, slipped out. "Ah, the USB!" Komaeda Nagito exclaimed, but he was immediately swept a few steps away by the crowd, and his view was blocked by a bunch of heads. Luckily, when Komaeda Nagito finally regained the freedom to move and went back to the spot, he found his USB still there, untouched by anyone. Komaeda Nagito softly breathed out, "That's a relief." Inside it, not only was it contains Kudoku painstakingly organizing Edogawa Ranpoa's documents, but there were also some of his own files, assignments left from his previous school, and various other things. There was no telling what might be useful in the future, even if he couldn't recall their purpose at the moment. It could be quite a hassle when it came to finding them again. Instead of casually shoving it into his pocket, he carefully placed the USB into his backpack. Only then did Komaeda Nagito continue walking towards the apartment he wanted to see. What Komaeda Nagito didn't know was that less than half an hour later, someone returned here in a rush, their face anxious as they searched everywhere, but found nothing. They could only call a number with a dejected expression. At least presently, there was nothing visibly wrong to Komaeda Nagito. He smoothly met up with the estate agent, found the apartment he wanted to see, and, under the agent's concealed, "Why is a kid looking at an apartment? Where are the adults?" gaze, inspected the room. One could only say that the information online looked decent, but the situation on site was different, with some issues being quite easy to notice. The agent, who had seen his fair share of ups and downs, noticed that Komaeda Nagito didn't seem satisfied with this apartment and said, "Shall we hurry to see other properties?" Komaeda Nagito looked at the sky, felt it was still alright, and said, "Sure, I'll trouble you." Komaeda Nagito didn't need to take public transportation this time, the agent drove him instead. The reason they didn't pick up Komaeda Nagito before was because Komaeda Nagito had said, wanted to try taking the bus for 2 stops to see how it feels. During their chat on the road, the agent got a bit of insight into Komaeda Nagito's financial situation and predicament. Knowing the other party genuinely wanted to buy a home, they worked even harder to push the sale. Before it got dark, Komaeda Nagito was taken by the agent to see 4 apartments, but unfortunately, none were very satisfactory. The agent was too eager to complete this deal, so instead of bidding farewell, they took Komaeda Nagito to have dinner, intending to chat a bit further. The real estate agent checked the list of available properties, thought for a moment, and said, "Komaeda-san, I have a property here that might meet your requirements. However, there's one issue. It is an inauspicious house." "Haunted?" Komaeda Nagito guessed. The agent shook his head, "It's a murder case. The owner lives elsewhere, and not only was the house broken into, but a dead body was found inside. The owner felt really uneasy and decided to sell it off. If you don't mind, you can take a look. It's also close to the school, within walking distance." Komaeda Nagito had no conflict with this kind of situation. "Then shall we go see this apartment?" He didn't expect that when he opened his wallet to pay, he found that the USB in his wallet had a strange sticky note attached to it. Komaeda Nagito's expression changed. He took out the USB and carefully observed it for a moment. Although it looked very similar, this was not his USB. Chapter 43 End. Chapter 44, The Danger from the USB. Komaeda Nagito thought for a moment, then put away the USB. If it were an ordinary person, they might simply think they had picked up the wrong USB by mistake. It would be a shame that they couldn't recover the files from their previous USB, but since this one could still be used and the contents weren't crucial, they could temporarily make use of it, maybe even put up a lost item notice, though the chance of finding the original owner would be quite slim. But for Komaeda Nagito, his first reaction was that something was wrong with this USB. After all, If it was simply misfortune, it would have just made him lose it outright. Why make him pick up the wrong one? He planned to go back and study the contents a bit. Of course, casually examining a strange USB might bring danger. Isn't this kind of plot often seen in movies? Did you look at it? If you look, you'll die. But in reality, if it truly gets to the level of needing to kill someone to keep them quiet, whether complicit or ignorant, sometimes the difference isn't that great. Whether you actually looked at it or not, by that point, the other party's attitude tends to lean towards silencing witnesses. As for whether you'll actually die or not, it doesn't depend on whether you looked at it, but rather on how difficult it is to silence you. Komaeda Nagito, in any case, wasn't really afraid of danger. Instead, he was somewhat looking forward to it. What he was truly worried about was that his luck might bring him a reversal scenario, making him anticipate something extraordinary, only to end up with a plain USB. After storing the USB away, Komaeda Nagito and the agent quickly had dinner, and then headed to that inauspicious house. Komaeda Nagito was actually quite pleased with the house. Everything, from the road leading to it, the decorations, and even the layout, suited his preferences well. Although it was a bit spacious, the owner urgently wanted to get rid of it due to haunted rumors, so the price was considerably lowered. The police are always coming and going out front. The owner must be so annoyed it's killing him, the agent sighed. If you're buying it outright, the price could actually drop a bit more. Komaeda Nagito said decisively, this house it is. Although he bought it decisively, the procedures were quite cumbersome, making it impossible to move in right away. There was also cleaning and other matters, which would take at least half a month to settle before anyone could live there. So, after signing the contract and paying the deposit, the agent drove Komaeda Nagito back to the hotel, stating they would keep in touch. After finally managing to sell the ominous house, the agent felt very pleased. Komaeda Nagito was also in a very good mood. He had sent a text to Kudo Shinichi, freeing him from having to keeping eyes on available houses. Afterwards, he turned on his computer and plugged in the USB. Komaeda Nagito then discovered that the USB was encrypted and required a password. He tried relying on his luck by randomly entering something a few times, but it always failed. Knowing his luck wasn't good today, he promptly gave up. It's not like he urgently needed to know what was inside. If it was truly important, someone would likely send out a lost item notice. With this kind of strange and suspicious stuff, he'd rather not actively report the lost item. He'd take his time dealing with it instead. Giving up, Komaeda Nagito shifted his gaze toward the package that the front desk had given him upon his return to the hotel. He looked at the sender and saw it was someone unfamiliar, with no return address. It had likely been delivered directly to the hotel. Curiously, he began to unwrap the package. Inside was a small medicine box containing some painkillers, cold medicine, adhesive bandages, antiseptic solution, and other items. Komaeda Nagito immediately knew it had been sent to him by his mentor, Natsume Soseki. Talking about painkillers, why are there so many other things? Could it be that, in Natsume-sensei's perception, he's someone who gets hurt often? Recalling the last time he saw Natsume-sensei, Komaeda Nagito suspected there were still cat claw marks on his face. He glanced at the fresh burn on his hand. Komaeda Nagito couldn't help but fall into silence. There's no way to refute it. This is his teacher's good intention, and he will make good use of it. That night, after finishing his homework, Komaeda Nagito took a painkiller, transitioning from a completely abnormal hyperthymesia state to reminiscing about crime and punishment. Hopefully, just as Natsume-sensei said, the medicine will have no after effects. It feels pretty good to use, and as someone afraid of pain, Komaeda Nagito gives it a 5-star rating. Amid the busyness, the strange USB that Komaeda Nagito had casually picked up no longer attracted his attention. He would probably only try the password again when he thought of it. However, while Komaeda Nagito didn't take the USB to heart, the person who lost it was desperately anxious. It's over, it's over, it's over. A young man, who looked like he had just graduated, searched back and forth along today's route for several hours. Finally, As the last bus was about to leave, he had to accept reality. I actually lost the USB. What do I do now? I sent my resume to 50 companies, only one let me interview, and I finally found a job. He knelt on the ground, looking up at the sky with a sigh, his hair already ruffled into a bird's nest from anxiety. At this time, there was nothing left on the road, no people, only him, sitting alone, dejected, mumbling beside the sidewalk. The contents won't be seen, right? I set a password. If someone saw it, would I have to silence them? Why did I do something like this? Why did I finally get a job offer only for it to involve this? The company appears ordinary, but in reality, it is modeled after foreign organizations to establish a murder-for-hire company called Murder Inc. When he accepted the job, he was completely unaware of the truth. As an ordinary person with common morals, he couldn't quit even after realizing what he'd gotten into, fearing he might be silenced. A new colleague who joined with him once said he wanted to report the company, and just a few days later, he turned up dead, reportedly a suicide. How could it possibly be a suicide? No doubt, it was the company that killed him. The company's outward image is that of a lawful organization, but in reality, it's a hellish operation. After seeing the corpse of a colleague who wanted to report them, the newbie finally realized the truth and considered reporting it as an absolute last resort. But the documents on that USB, if discovered, he'd be destroyed. If the company learned he lost it, he might not survive even without police involvement. This outcome would be no different from reporting them. The newbie sat in misery, thoughts of death filling his mind. Ever since joining this murder-for-hire company, he'd learned about all sorts of terrifying ways to die. Now, that knowledge only made his fear worse. If I want a solution, it can be done, he muttered, searching online, lost important company document, what to do now? Hire a detective. I wonder if I have enough clues. There are no cameras here either. What privacy protection? Can privacy be more important than my life? Sob sob. Just then, a stray dog walked past. At first, the newbie didn't react. But as the dog moved further away, he suddenly realized something. Wait, that thing in the dog's mouth, the color. Could it be my USB? Ecstatic, he chased after the dog. Wait for me, After countless hardships, he finally snatched the USB from the dog's mouth under the strange looks of passers-by. That's right. This color, this card, this sticker. Where's the sticker? The newbie paused. Had the dog licked it off? Could it really be such a coincidence that there was another USB exactly like his, lost here? Holding on to hope, he plugged the USB into his computer. But humans should never hope for luck. The contents felt completely unfamiliar, just one glance and he knew it wasn't his. But just in case, what if the USB's owner also picked up the wrong one? His own might still be out there. He clicked on a document and found everything was related to a detective named Edogawa Ranpo. The newbie broke into a cold sweat. Could the USB's owner be a detective? What if they had strong investigative abilities and already cracked the password? Should he just give it back to the dog and pretend nothing happened? Wait, no. If the owner really is a detective, then he must retrieve the USB. Otherwise, even if the company collapses, they'll still come after him, the main culprit. Fortunately, the following documents looked relatively normal, school assignments. A quick look revealed they were from a junior high school. The newbie finally sighed in relief. Just a regular student, huh? That's good. After searching some more, he found the name, Komaeda Nagito, Beika Junior High School. He felt confident. Alright, I'll take sick leave tomorrow. Then I'll go to the school and corner him. The next day, Komaeda Nagito went to school as usual. When Kudo Shinichi asked Komaeda Nagito if he found a house, he mentioned finding a strange USB. It doesn't necessarily mean the content is dangerous, Kudo Shinichi said vaguely. It could just be that they simply don't want others, like their parents, to see the content. The encryption method can easily be looked up online. Yes, that's also possible, Komaeda Nagito said with a cheerful smile. Recently, too many things have been happening, and I'm feeling a bit jittery. Let's not talk about this. Let's continue discussing that house you bought. Kudo Shinichi's expression became a bit more focused. Because it's very close to my place, just down the same street, I heard quite a bit. The one who broke into the house, even killed someone inside, seemed to be related to the underworld. Komaeda Nagito let out a sigh. It feels like he's been dealing with the underworld a lot lately. Even though the Japanese mafia is legal, it shouldn't be this prevalent, right? Dazai-kun, the port mafia, that Japanese police undercover infiltrating the liquor factory, and even his newly bought house. It hasn't even been a month yet, but if it continues like this for another year, will he end up gathering all of Japan's underworld? In another world, even if there were an ultimate Yakuza classmate with underworld connections, it's not as prevalent as this. This world is truly strange. Kudo Shinichi continued speaking. Based on the situation at the scene, it appears that the victim searched everywhere in the room before he died. Because of this, the police also investigated the house's owner, suspecting some kind of connection to the deceased. However, no matter how they checked, the owner was completely innocent. Komaeda Nagito mused. It is suspicious. Could it be that he wasn't looking for something, but rather hiding something? As expected, Senpai also thinks the same, Kudo Shinichi smiled. Actually, I also think that might be the case, but the police couldn't find anything when investigating in that direction, and in the end, nothing was resolved, and the culprit wasn't caught. Komaeda Nagito sighed. As long as I can stay peacefully, that will be enough. Kudo Shinichi agreed. But 1 week of time is not enough. Senpai will soon have to move out of the hotel. The most suitable option is still staying at my house, right? After all, that house is close by, and it's a chance to familiarize yourself with the route to school. Besides, last time when I helped find a place, it ended up not making you happy, and I even received a reward, which made me feel really embarrassed, so give me a chance to make it up to you. Well, at this point, there's no point in looking for another hotel. Komaeda Nagito recalled his various failures and let out a bitter smile. In the end, I still have to trouble Kudo-kun. You've really helped me a lot, and I don't know how to thank you. Kudo Shinichi decisively coughed to interrupt him. I haven't really helped much. But since Senpai's house is there, I want to go in and take a look at the scene. Maybe there's something to discover. Well, even though it's already been cleaned, there probably won't be anything left, but just in case. No problem, Komaeda Nagito readily agreed. School activities are relatively uneventful, but if there's anything special about today, it would be that the Tokyo Fire Prevention Department and the Education Department have collaborated to conduct fire safety education in schools, and it's finally Beika Junior High School's turn. Komaeda Nagito actually ran into someone he knew. Oh, Komaeda-kun. Hagiwara Kenji patted Masuda Jinpei's shoulder. In the corridor, female students of Beika Junior High School had stars in their eyes as they glanced over. Smiling, he greeted Komaeda Nagito, long time no see. Komaeda Nagito also smiled and responded, long time no see, Inspector Hagiwara, Inspector Masuda. Are you both here as part of the fire safety education team? Something like that. But I clearly remember you are from the Explosive Ordnance Disposal Team of the Metropolitan Police Mobile Unit. Shouldn't it be the fire prevention team people coming? It really doesn't feel like it's reliable. Actually, we were on break, and while passing by, we saw some friends from the fire prevention team. We heard the destination this time was Beika Junior High School, so we took the opportunity to come over, help them out a bit, and also drop by to see you. Hagiwara Kenji looked at the bandages on Komaeda Nagito's hands, as well as the high pile of exercise books. Where are these going? Let me help you. In your condition, your teacher still makes you move all this? Ha, it was me who volunteered. After all, this is all I can do, just small tasks. Komaeda Nagito noticed that Hagiwara Kenji wordlessly took half, and Masuda Jinpei also took the remaining half without saying a word, so he quickly said, "I can do it myself, no need to trouble you too." "Alright, lead the way and stop talking so much," Masuda Jinpei said impatiently. "The two of us don't know the way." Thus, Komaeda Nagito obediently led the two, and when the teacher's office saw two handsome guys helping to carry the assignments, they were stunned. They originally wanted to say something, but seeing Masuda Jinpei still wearing sunglasses indoors with a look that said he wasn't to be messed with, they could only dryly say thank you. Hagiwara Kenji skillfully mediated, then took Komaeda Nagito and Masuda Jinpei to the office. Using the excuse of helping Komaeda Nagito change his medicine, they borrowed the infirmary, and the nurse also cooperatively said that they were going to find a colleague for lunch, leaving the space to them. Komaeda-kun. Hagiwara Kenji roughly checked Komaeda Nagito's injuries, and after confirming that nothing was serious, he breathed a sigh of relief. "Your physical condition during incidents like this is really more alarming each time. The burns aren't serious," Komaeda Nagito explained. "He's not talking about the burns, forget it." Masuda Jinpei clicked his tongue, continuing to check the security level of the infirmary. This would determine whether their topic could become even more in-depth later on. A few days ago, Morofushi Hiromitsu, who had been missing for many years, finally made contact with them using an unfamiliar phone number. They actually guessed that the reason they hadn't heard from him since graduation and couldn't find him might be because he was working undercover. Therefore, they didn't ask much about his job, only about his well-being and when he might return. For questions that couldn't be answered, Morofushi Hiromitsu responded vaguely. However, he did tell them one thing, that on Friday, when they called Komaeda Nagito, he was there listening in. After that, he said he currently didn't have the means, and asked the two of them to keep an eye on Komaeda Nagito, not too obviously, just slightly more frequently than before, as the kid worries him. Hagiwara Kenji and Masuda Jinpei calculated, feeling that the timing was so coincidental. Morofushi Hiromitsu is no longer undercover, yet somehow got involved with Komaeda Nagito, and even asked them to look after Komaeda Nagito. Seeing this attitude, it seemed as if their old colleague had encountered some danger, and that miraculous luck of Komaeda Nagito might even help save their old colleague altogether. Their hearts almost stopped hearing this. They don't understand why Komaeda Nagito, this kid, always ended up surrounded by all kinds of dangers. However, today they really weren't here specifically to see Komaeda Nagito. Just like they explained earlier, it was truly just a coincidence. They came to help and conveniently checked on Komaeda Nagito. Fire prevention isn't only about fires, Hagiwara Kenji found an excuse. Teaching ordinary citizens to identify dangerous items and promptly report them is also essential. In this aspect, we are experts. Masuda Jinpei rolled his eyes under the sunglasses. Bomb disposal expert, there's no need to be so detailed about telling kids to stay away from dangerous objects, close enough is fine. Frankly, you're just here to watch the fun, and no one is going to say anything to you about it. Hahaha, your relationship is still as good as ever, huh? Komaeda Nagito intervened. Actually, I know, you guys want to ask about that person from Friday, right? Hagiwara Kenji and Masuda Jinpei withdrew their casual demeanor, exchanged glances, and then looked at Komaeda Nagito. He said you two were his classmates, Komaeda Nagito said. But beyond that, there's not much more I can say, just that he's doing really well right now. Honestly, as his classmates, it's easier for you to be in touch with him than me. Because on his side, there are also a lot of things he can't say, and he's unwilling to talk. We can't get through to him one-sidedly either. Masuda Jinpei pouted. I'll just ask one question. If it doesn't touch on confidentiality, just tell us, at the time of your meeting, was he in danger or not? Komaeda Nagito nodded. Masuda Jinpei put his hand to his forehead with a, I knew it, expression. Hagiwara Kenji said, let's leave it at that, we won't ask further. If you encounter a similar situation in the future, make protecting yourself the priority, don't be reckless, and you can also give us a call. Masuda Jinpei yawned on the side, his mind unusually clear. Morofushi Hiromitsu said that for now, he wouldn't return to the Metropolitan Police Department, his identity remains non-existent. Could it be that the danger comes from within the Metropolitan Police Department itself? The fact that he contacted them might not simply be to assure them of his safety. Although his questions were well crafted, the way his topics mainly revolved around Komaida Nagito was still too obvious, and he asked for details. If it wasn't Morofushi Hiromitsu asking, they would have already lost patience and changed the subject, not to mention that, even without a legitimate reason from higher-ups, they wouldn't consider cooperating 100%. So, is Morofushi Hiromitsu currently in a department investigating Komaida Nagito? Afterward, telling them to take good care of Komaida Nagito was implying that Komaida Nagito himself wasn't a problem, so they could rest assured. Which department is Morofushi Hiromitsu in now? Could it be the National Police Agency? Masuda Jinpei's guess was correct, because the one whose undercover identity was exposed was the Metropolitan Police Department's Morofushi Hiromitsu, while the National Police Agency's Furuya Rei remained safe, so they concluded that there was an issue within the Metropolitan Police Department, and temporarily placed Morofushi Hiromitsu under the protection of a secret division of the National Police Agency. Morofushi Hiromitsu caught up just in time when Natsume Soseki suddenly wanted detailed information on Komaida Nagito, and found out that Hagiwara Kenji and Masuda Jinpei had contact with Komaida Nagito. He decided to use Morofushi Hiromitsu, who was supposed to have vanished from the human world, to inquire for some details under the guise of being a friend. There were many things that the person involved didn't say, and the investigators couldn't find out either. As repayment for Morofushi Hiromitsu's risks, and under Natsume Soseki's instigation, the Special Division over there provided technical support, using the ability of an ability user to wash away any traces that could lead someone to Morofushi Hiromitsu. Because Komaida Nagito's luck is truly extraordinary, the Special Division intentionally investigated thoroughly, which led some to be curious and check Komaida Nagito's records. The Special Division had no suspicions at all, and only Director Tanida knew a bit. The Japanese National Police Agency's secret department received information regarding the investigation of Komaida Nagito, but they also believed it was merely a routine check related to rescuing an undercover agent, and similarly had no suspicions. Two major secret government organizations, just like that, handled the transfer of documents for Komaida Nagito without raising any suspicion except for Director Tanida, who noticed something was off. Everyone else found it completely normal, even Natsume Soseki had no knowledge of anything related to this matter. For now, apart from Natsume Soseki and Komaida Nagito himself, no one knows about their teacher-student relationship, a secret that Natsume Soseki has protected very well. Even intel providers Hagiwara Kenji and Masuda Jinpei just thought that Komaida Nagito was involved in a dangerous situation, specifically due to his undercover classmates. After assessing the situation, it felt like there were no issues, and they could be completely at ease. They chatted in the infirmary for the whole noon, even having lunch there. Then, the two policemen, who had mixed business with personal matters, were dragged away by friends from the fire prevention department, asking for their help to prepare for the afternoon's fire prevention lecture and drill. By the time they finally wrapped up the fire safety education in the afternoon, it was already time for dismissal. Komaida Nagito had just left the school gate when he saw Hagiwara Kenji standing next to the fire truck, waving at him to say goodbye. Since Mori Rang and Suzuki Sonoko had plans, today only Kudo Shinichi and Komaida Nagito were heading home together after leaving the school gate. Seeing someone on the other side greeting Komaida Nagito, Kudo Shinichi asked, "Komaida-senpai, is that a firefighter?" "No, it's a police officer," Komaida Nagito explained. "I got to know him a few years ago, we're quite familiar." "I see." Kudo Shinichi's peripheral vision suddenly caught something. He instinctively turned his head to look and noticed a young man in a suit hurrying away. Strange, he didn't seem to be here to pick up a child, nor did he seem to be just passing by. Quite suspicious. The suspicious person quickly turned the corner, left through the school gate, and leaned against the wall, gasping with a look of fright. Unexpectedly coincidental, he happened to meet that Komaida Nagito, who looked exactly the same as in the news photo, but why would he know the police? Could it be that he found something out? He didn't dare to approach. The police are still right there. If there really was an issue, the other party wouldn't even need to call the emergency number, just a single word and he'd be thrown in jail. No, I need to think of another way. Follow him a bit, see where Komai de Nagito is going. Chapter 44 End. Chapter 45, Elevator Incident and the Mastermind. Something feels off. Kudo Shinichi, after parting ways with Komai de Nagito, did not head back towards his home but instead waited in place for a while. As expected, just when Komai de Nagito's figure was about to leave his line of sight, a familiar figure emerged from around the corner, sneaking behind. Kudo Shinichi's gaze darkened. That's right, it's the young businessman he just saw. Why is he tailing Komai de senpai? This guy definitely has a problem. Considering that if he immediately went to catch him, the other party could find an excuse and claim they were just passing by, Kudo Shinichi decided to keep tailing them. Thus, he followed as well. Komai de Nagito, thinking about the convenience of going to school, found that the distance between the hotel and the school wasn't too far. Considering that it was easier to walk directly because if he took the bus, he would still end up walking a bit more anyway, he continued to walk back directly. The three of them maintained a certain distance from each other as they made their way back to the hotel. The newbie member looked bewildered as he watched Komai de Nagito enter the hotel lobby and stopped in his tracks. Huh? Wait a minute. Why a hotel? If he's attending school in Tokyo, doesn't he have a fixed residence? How can the hotel let him sneak in and steal the USB? The newbie member had lost his dreams. Kudo Shinichi, observing from behind, saw the newbie member not follow inside. After thinking for a moment, he decided not to hide his presence and walked up to pat the other's shoulder. Hello, may I ask? With that pat, the newbie was so startled that his whole body trembled. When he turned around and saw Kudo Shinichi, his pupils suddenly contracted. I noticed it seemed like you were tailing. Before Kudo Shinichi could finish his sentence, the newbie member immediately turned and ran. He wasn't stupid. Just now at the school gate, he saw this person together with his target. They must know each other, and they've probably realized he's tailing Komai de Nagito. If he didn't run now, when would he? The presence under his hands suddenly gone, Kudo Shinichi didn't expect this guy to flee so decisively and quickly. Hey! Kudo Shinichi had just taken 2 steps in pursuit when his shoulder was suddenly grabbed, and a somewhat familiar voice spoke behind him. What's going on? Kudo Shinichi froze, turned around, and found that it was indeed the person he was thinking of. Dressed in a black suit, with bandages wrapped around various parts of his body, giving off an unnerving smile, just standing there, he exuded an eerie sense of pressure. Dazai-san. Kudo Shinichi had no intention of escaping or continuing his pursuit of the suspicious person. Instead, he carefully greeted him. What are you doing here? Came to find Komai de-kun, you know. Dazai Osamu made no effort to hide his purpose. You were tailing that person just now. I see, Komai de-kun got involved with some weirdo again. Looking at Dazai Osamu, who didn't need anyone to reply but instead answered his own questions, clearly laying out the truth of the matter, and casually labeling someone as a weirdo, Kudo Shinichi couldn't help but raise his brows. Actually, the strangest person here is you, Port Mafia's Dazai Osamu. Do you really not have any sense of awareness? Dazai Osamu had probably gathered the intel he wanted and let go of Kudo Shinichi in a cheerful mood before turning and heading toward the hotel. Kudo Shinichi hesitated to speak, but in the end, all he could do was take out his phone and compose an email to Komaeda-senpai. Senpai, you're being followed. I saw him tailing you all the way to the hotel entrance. He looked at it and somehow felt that his words made him sound like a stalker. Even though he knew that senpai wouldn't misunderstand, he still added a little more. I felt suspicious, so I followed, and even took pictures, though unfortunately, I couldn't get a clear shot of the face. Senpai, be careful. Afterward, he attached the photos of the figure and the side profile and sent them to Komai de Nagito. While waiting for the elevator at the hotel, Komaeda Nagito suddenly heard his phone beep. He casually took it out to check, and after seeing it was a message from Kudo Shinichi, he clicked on it to take a look. The stalker, he doesn't know him at all, and he doesn't seem to be like those kidnappers scouting the area. Strange. Komaeda Nagito was just about to delve into pondering what could have possibly attracted a stalker recently, when suddenly, the elevator arrived. He was staring at his phone in deep thought, taking a step forward, when suddenly someone next to him deliberately bumped into him, squeezing into the elevator ahead of him. Komaeda Nagito lost his balance from the bump, with one hand holding his bag and the other holding his phone, unable to grab onto anything to steady himself, falling backward uncontrollably. Luckily, someone stopped his fall in time. Komaeda Nagito suddenly felt a pair of hands grab both of his arms from behind. He could sense something pressing against his back, and in the next moment, those hands adjusted his leaning posture to upright. Don't walk while looking at your phone. Never thought I'd say something like this in my lifetime, but it's quite amusing. Dazai Osamu pushed the dazed Komaeda Nagito toward the elevator and said in a light tone, but this time, it's not Komaeda-kun's fault. Some defeated mutt got mad elsewhere and, not daring to confront the person who angered him, decided to find someone who looked easy to bully instead. It's truly pathetic. With such a narrow perspective, no wonder his wife wants to cheat on him. What? The area was clearly quite spacious, and the man who had intentionally bumped into Komaeda Nagito just now, had been in the elevator playing on his phone, suddenly heard these words and no longer pretended that nothing had happened. Instead, his expression darkened as he looked up toward Dazai Osamu. However, his fierce gaze stopped at Dazai Osamu, who was dressed in a black suit and had bandages stained with blood. The aggression in his eyes instantly dissolved, and after locking eyes with those cold, indifferent eyes for a brief moment, he quickly averted his gaze, moving closer to the elevator's advertisement poster as if to avoid attention. A member of the mafia. That's right, this guy is part of the mafia. Damn it, it was just a moment of dissatisfaction, randomly choosing a seemingly weakling among the youngsters. Why did I end up provoking the mafia? He didn't even do anything. Wasn't it just, accidentally, bumping into someone a little? Doesn't the mafia have any sense of reason? Also, how did they find out his wife was cheating? Did they investigate him? The more he thought about it, the more scared he became. The man looked like he was still browsing his phone, but in reality, he couldn't read a single word. His mind was filled with bloody, terrifying thoughts. Dazai Osamu paid no attention to the fact that the man in front of him was actually psychologically fragile. He ushered Komaeda Nagito in, casually pressed the floor button, too lazy to circle around to Komaeda Nagito's side, instead leaning on his shoulder, glancing at his phone. That little detective really cares about you, huh? Yeah, Kudo-kun has helped me a lot, Komaeda Nagito admitted. Dazai Osamu glanced again at the photo on the phone, seemingly in thought. Komaeda-kun, have you encountered anything interesting lately? Komaeda Nagito immediately thought of Natsume Soseki, but this was something he couldn't mention. Before his hesitation even showed, Dazai Osamu had already noticed. It seems to be a secret. How great, Komaeda-kun is always able to encounter something interesting. Every time Dazai Osamu saw Komaeda Nagito, he wanted to sigh. Why is it that I can never? He hadn't even finished speaking when a strange noise suddenly came from above the elevator. Dazai Osamu's expression changed, and he pushed Komaeda Nagito to the side of the elevator. Hold on to the handrail. Komaeda Nagito instinctively pressed against the elevator wall and grabbed the handrail. In the next moment, the elevator started to shake violently, and soon after, there was a sensation of weightlessness amid the jolts. The elevator malfunctioned. Komaeda Nagito immediately became aware of the current situation, but he couldn't speak, because opening his mouth now could easily result in biting his tongue. Fortunately, very soon, due to the emergency braking system being activated, the elevator suddenly stopped, without really plummeting to the bottom. The man, because he had been looking at his phone the whole time, his delayed reaction made him unable to steady himself during the shaking, causing his body to crash around inside the elevator. Nearly hitting his head, the man knelt on the floor, holding his head, and after feeling that it had stabilized, he slowly looked up. Is it over? Komaeda Nagito sighed. I really haven't encountered an elevator malfunction in a long time. Sorry for dragging you into this, Dazai-kun. If you hadn't come to find me, you definitely wouldn't have run into this kind of situation. What kind of situations did you encounter before? Dazai Osamu looked around, casually asking. Just the normal malfunction, stuck between floors, suddenly losing power, that sort of thing. Well, today you get to add a new experience, Dazai Osamu smiled at Komaeda Nagito. This time it's a human-caused incident, which could temporarily be considered an attempted murder. I just heard an explosion. What kind of joke is this? Are they really coming after you? I'm just an ordinary person, I have nothing to do with you guys, I'm not going to die in a place like this. The man broke down. Let me out of here. Right, the door. With life and death at hand, he no longer cared about the fear he felt towards Dazai Osamu earlier. After all, the worst that could happen was dying here, so couldn't he vent a bit before dying? In front of him was the elevator door. He couldn't get up, so he stayed in a kneeling position, trying to pry the door open forcefully like in the movies. Dazai Osamu quietly approached from behind, pressing down on his neck, the cold touch making the man shiver and calm down a bit. Based on the time spent during the fall and the floor where it happened, we should currently be between the 7th and 8th floors. You can't open the door and get out. But, it's just... The man felt his blood vessels pounding wildly under this dark-haired youth's grip. How would you know if you don't try? Dazai Osamu sighed. Talking with an idiot is truly exhausting. Let me be straightforward. If you dare make a move, I'll kill you before you even fall to your death. The stranger. Komaeda Nagito put down his bag, raised his head, and looked around. Dazai-kun, is there still a bomb here? The unfamiliar man suddenly stiffened. But bomb? As expected, Komaeda-kun can understand. I really want Komaeda-kun as my direct subordinate. Dazai Osamu, after confirming that this person wouldn't act rashly, let go of him, but for safety reasons, still explained a bit. The explosion just now merely caused the elevator to fall. If a bomb was set at the very top, then it must have also taken into account the emergency brake function of the elevator. Trying to handle everything at once isn't impossible, but it will lead to complications, possibly with further plans. Like increasing the sense of fear, observing the victim's final struggles before death, and so on. Komaeda Nagito continued, I remember there's a type of bomb that, once activated, requires a stable state. If it's externally disturbed, it will explode. If you forcefully open the door, the elevator will experience some vibrations. If that kind of bomb is installed here, maintaining calmness and reducing movement is the best course of action. Komaeda-kun understands quite a bit, huh? Can you defuse bombs? Someone thought of teaching me, but it was against the rules, and another person discouraged it. In the end, I was only taught to spot signs of a bomb and to quickly report it. Dazai Osamu let out a laugh. You all still find time to laugh. The man collapsed in frustration by the elevator door. What do we do now? Komaeda Nagito pondered and said, it shouldn't be random, right? Are they after me? Speaking of which, I have recently come across someone who seems somewhat dangerous. Someone like Jin. It's not the organization you think, Dazai Osamu said. They don't want to go against the Port Mafia. The man shivered slightly. Port Mafia. Truly a chaotic darkness. If he doesn't listen, that person might really kill him. But if he listens, there might still be a slim chance of survival. Who could it be? Komaeda Nagito tried to recall. Could it be targeting the Port Mafia? The man boldly spoke, pretending to help with the guess. Dazai Osamu, this is only my second time at this hotel, old man, why don't you think about who you've offended? Me? How could I? The man began to speak, but his tone gradually weakened. Komaeda Nagito looked down at the man lying there. Seems like you've offended too many people, you can't even remember. Truly trash among trash. The man was angry but didn't dare to say anything because he knew that he himself couldn't defuse the bomb, but perhaps that port mafia boy might understand a bit. Komaeda Nagito took out his phone to check. Ah, still has a signal. I can call for help. Since the elevator malfunctioned, someone outside should have reported it already. Dazai-Osamu waved at the man, who didn't dare to refuse, but was also afraid that too large a movement would trigger the bomb, so he could only inch his way over. Sit here and don't move, Dazai-Osamu commanded, then stepped on the man's shoulder, reaching for the top of the elevator, feeling around everywhere. Not knowing what he was doing, after a while the mafia boy slowly opened the ceiling, then poked his head out, and checked the dark elevator shaft a bit before sitting back down in the elevator. Stay still and don't move, there really is a bomb here. Dazai-Osamu looked down and asked. Komaeda-kun, do you have scissors? I have them, I also have a screwdriver. Komaeda Nagito immediately rummaged through his backpack. Here. Dazai-Osamu didn't ask why he carried all that. Taking them, he said, it's a simple mechanism, probably not too many complicated components. I'll open it first and take a look. You can call the police, you know, have them not obstruct things without helping. After that, he immediately turned around and continued with his work. Komaeda Nagito obediently dialed Hagiwara Kenji's mobile number. Komaeda-kun. That's rare, calling me so proactively. We just saw each other recently. Hagiwara Kenji's tone was very serious because he knew Komaeda Nagito wasn't the type to maintain contact without a reason. Did something happen? I'm staying at a hotel, and something happened to the elevator, Komaeda Nagito said concisely. I just found a bomb on the top of the elevator. Hagiwara Kenji was silent for a moment. He was really anxious, really worried, but he couldn't show any of that. He needed to make those in the midst of danger feel at ease. So he calmly said, if it hasn't exploded yet, you can rest assured for now. Don't act recklessly. Jinpei and I will be there shortly. How many people are in the elevator? Including me, 3. Don't tell me you destroyed the top of the elevator. Forget it. Hagiwara Kenji advised, patiently wait for the professionals, and be careful of any listening devices. Suddenly, Dazai-Osamu threw something down from above. The bug seems to be broken. I've already disarmed the bomb. Probably realizing that making a bit of disturbance wouldn't matter, Dazai-Osamu directly jumped down, grabbed Komaeda Nagito's phone, and said, tell the police arriving at the hotel to investigate. What's your name? He kicked the man. The man reluctantly reported his name. Did you hear that? It's him. Investigate who he might have offended in this hotel earlier, probably the staff or someone similar. The possibility that the culprit is among them is quite high. Hagiwara Kenji didn't ask who had suddenly jumped in, he directly agreed and then asked in a serious tone, just now, were you the one disarming the explosive? Relax, Dazai-Osamu said lazily, although I haven't disarmed as many explosives as the explosive ordnance disposal team, I'm still quite skilled. I can distinguish between an active bomb and one that's disarmed. You should quickly open the door to the 7th floor. We're between the 7th and 8th floors. After speaking, Dazai-Osamu immediately threw the phone back to Komaeda Nagito. Komaeda Nagito took it and continued, thank you, Inspector Hagiwara. Hagiwara Kenji asked in disbelief, who are you stuck in the elevator with, huh? The voice sounded like a child in their teens, but they could disarm explosives and seemed very familiar. Are kids these days all this impressive? Komaeda Nagito cleared his throat. Sorry. Fine. Anyway, Jinpei-chan just made contact with the police at the scene. Your situation here has also been conveyed. Just wait a little longer, Hagiwara Kenji said. See you soon. 10 minutes passed, and eventually the hotel staff opened the doors to the 7th floor elevator shafts, allowing them each to take an elevator to the top, providing a way to lift them up. Although they waited in the pitch-black elevator shaft for over 10 seconds, as soon as they reached the light of the yellow-lit hallway, the man's nerves relaxed, and the emotions he had been unable to show finally burst out, as he knelt on the floor and cried uncontrollably. As for Dazai-Osamu and Komai de Nagito, aside from a little dirt on their bodies, they seemed completely unaffected. Dazai-Osamu casually slipped his hands into his pockets, leaning lazily against Komai de Nagito, and in a drawn-out voice said, "Officer San, we are the victims here. I have been greatly traumatized and need to go home to calm myself down, or else I might be left with lasting psychological scars. Could we leave now? Everyone." Even the man's sobbing was interrupted, looking incredulously at Dazai-Osamu, shocked by his blatant lying skills. Komai de Nagito smiled awkwardly but said nothing. At that moment, Hagiwara Kenji ran over. "Komai de-kun." Komai de Nagito greeted the two familiar police officers, Masuda Jinpei and Hagiwara Kenji. They evaluated Komai de Nagito for a moment, and after concluding he was fine, casually glanced at the seemingly boneless Dazai-Osamu beside him. With just one glance, they could discern Dazai-Osamu's occupation. "Komai de-kun, your choice of friends is really problematic." Though they thought this in their hearts, they didn't show it on the outside. After all, Japan's mafia is legal, and it's also legal for mafia members to be friends with ordinary people. No one said the mafia could only befriend other mafia members, right? Hagiwara Kenji got straight to the point and said to Dazai-Osamu, "The person you want to investigate has been caught." He confessed to being the one who did this out of spite. Every time the man came to the hotel, he would humiliate him. Knowing that today was his last day staying here, he decided to go all out, waiting for the right moment. He thought that this time was the perfect opportunity, but ended up dragging you into it. The man couldn't believe it. He didn't think it would actually be his own fault. In truth, he had secretly thought they were here to find trouble with the Port Mafia, and he was just the scapegoat. Inspector Megure, in charge of this case, looked seriously at the man. "This matter, in fact, stems from you insulting others first. I hope this time you can learn a lesson. Next time you want to take your anger out on someone, think about today." I won't do that again." The man swallowed. Can scolding someone to death really happen? How terrifying. The culprit is the janitor. Dazai-Osamu suddenly interrupted. "Can I take a look?" Inspector Megure was startled. "Don't you have a psychological shadow?" Dazai-Osamu. Ahem. Hagiwara Kenji pointed, "He's over there." The police officers moved aside from the corridor, showing the detained culprit and an officer sitting together at the end of the long bench. He was wearing handcuffs, dressed in a janitor's uniform, and his eyes were a bit vacant. Dazai-Osamu watched from a distance for a moment, then suddenly took a step forward, walking up to the culprit. The culprit, with a delayed reaction, raised his head to look briefly, then lowered it again. "Something feels odd." Komai de Nagito also approached and asked upon hearing that, "What seems odd?" "Actually, that guy was very well chosen. Last time I was here, I met him too. He's indeed the type to endure bullying quietly without an outburst." Dazai-Osamu stroked his chin. "But now, how long has it been since then, and his personality has changed drastically." Dazai-Osamu gave the culprit a light pat on the shoulder. The culprit's entire body trembled, and his eyes suddenly cleared up somewhat. Wait. What was I doing? I see. Dazai-Osamu reached a conclusion. It's possible to guide someone's thoughts. Well then, let me ask you something. Dazai-Osamu smiled cheerfully. Did you recently ask anyone for help or confide in someone? The culprit looked at Dazai-Osamu, who had been awakened from a strange state, and, filled with inexplicable trust, reluctantly calmed down and spoke hesitantly. I don't know. I was just going out for coffee, and during that time, I talked about some work troubles with a guy sharing the table. Dazai-Osamu asked, who was that person? I don't know, but I heard someone call him Kyogoku-san. Oh. Komaeda Nagito suddenly muttered in a low voice. Could it be Kyogoku Natsuhiko?
Chapter 45 End.